So, a few months ago, I found out that I became a chartered accountant here in the UK, and I managed to pass all 15 ACA exams first time with scores as high as 98%. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, but I really don't think I'm the smartest person when it comes to academics. So, if I can do this, then I'm sure anyone watching this can too. So, if you're just getting started on your ACA journey, or maybe you're a few years or a few months in, these are just some of the tips that I wish I had when I was just getting started. These aren't going to be the usual generic tips that you hear everyone say, like hammer the question bank or just sit a lot of past papers, because you probably know that by now. And yes, they are very important, but I just wanted to give you a few of the obscure things that I was doing and that really helped me the most in order to actually pass these exams. So I'm going to jump into my nifty little Google slide and show you those 3 tips now. So, my first big tip is to find your power hours and understand flow states. So, this sounds a little bit wishy washy, I know, but really, when you get thinking about it, in order to pass these exams, you need to figure out how best to study, what to study, and really how to maximize the time you have when it comes to studying. Because you're not a uni anymore, you're not sitting A levels, you can't dedicate whole days to studying anymore. Chances are you probably have a full time job that's quite busy around it, like I did. And you really need to maximize your time and know exactly what you're doing. So, this really comes down to power hours and flow states. So, a power hour, right? It's a certain time of day, 1 to 2 hours, where you feel most productive. Now, most people have heard of the early bird or night owl, and you really need to figure out which one you are to lead into your advantage. So, for me personally, I'm definitely an early bird. I could wake up at 5 a.m. and quite happily cram in a few hours of studying before work, and I felt great at those times. But for other people, the thought of waking up at that time to study sounds awful, and you're more of a night owl, working 10, 11 p.m. at night. But for me, by about 8, 9 o'clock, I was pretty done. So I couldn't go past that time. But the mornings for me were my hours. So I'd really, I'd really propel you to ask yourself, what are the times of day where I feel most productive? Obviously, you're going to be working in your core hours during the day or a bit of overtime, but around that, what are the hours where you can really maximize your productivity and you know you're going to be focused without any distraction? So these are your hours for deep, undistracted work. Now, once per week, I would basically plan out what chapters I was going to cover, what questions I was going to attempt, any past papers I was going to complete. Every Sunday evening, I'd do this for the week ahead. So I knew exactly what I had to cover, when I was going to do it. And you really need to know exactly what you're going to do when you're going into one of these study sessions, because a lot of people sort of just pick up a book or just start studying, watch a few chapters here and there, maybe attempt a few questions, but don't really track exactly what they're doing, what the objective of that study session is actually going to be. And you need to be realistic with it, because it's all about chipping away day by day. I feel like a lot of people set themselves these big objectives or things to do, you know, smash out 3 or 4 past papers in a day, or hammer like 20 questions of the question bank in a few hours. And for the most part, it's not realistic. You might only get one question done in an hour, but you can get it done well and you can mark it well. So I'd really applaud you to figure out exactly what you are going to study and what you want to achieve from your study sessions, rather than just mindlessly going into it, and really find those key hours of your day where you feel like you're most productive. So when I was studying, now this was back in October, coming up to my last advanced levels, but as you can see, it's a Saturday, but this is kind of what a typical day looked like for me. So I booked a bit of annual leave and had a bit of study leave coming up to these exams, so I didn't have to work around it. But this is what a typical sort of weekend or day would have looked like for me. I'd know exactly what question I was going to go over, what question I was going to mark, what tuition course exams I was going to do, when I was going to have lunch, when I was going to hit the gym. All these things were very much mapped out, and I stuck to them rigidly. I was very on it when it came to it, and I kept myself accountable. So, flow states. Now, states are kind of like those productive hours where time just sort of blends together and you just feel like you're productive. It's a weird thing to try and describe, and I didn't want to just shove in a random definition, but really you kind of know when you get into a flow state because your mind just becomes very focused and you kind of block out the outside world a little bit and you really start to feel productive. So, as I said, and I want to drum this in, you need to know exactly what you intend to accomplish and do just that every single study session. So, your mind is going to want to do more and it's going to want to bounce around, particularly when you're watching a tuition video or you're attempting a past paper or something like that. But you really need to not let it. Now, I find a few of the best ways to overcome this distracted mind is firstly to eliminate distractions from your study area. So, whether that's on your desk or a dining room table, just make sure you don't have a phone there. Make sure there's nothing there that you are going to pick up and get distracted by. Second, binaural beats or white noise. So get yourself a good pair of headphones like I've got, whack them on, and stick on some binaural beats or white noise from YouTube, or you can use an app like Headspace like I do. Now, really, this gets your mind pretty focused and kind of blocks out any outside noise. I've just found it very helpful for me. Some people like it, some people don't, but I would recommend giving it a go. Now, tabs. So on your laptop or computer, whatever you're using, just make sure the only tab you have open is that question bank or that tuition course video or whatever it is you're going to do. Try not to open a load of tabs on Google or give yourself that distraction or potential for distraction that you can go ahead and start searching, because it's very easy to click on Instagram or head over to YouTube and just start scrolling about. But really want to hone in on what you're doing. And a good way of doing this is just to keep your brain engaged. So take notes, grab a book and start highlighting as you watch a video, write things down. Just get your mind focused on what it is you're doing and give it something to do. So it's really why I like the binaural beats, because I feel like it kind of distracts me from wanting to do anything else and I can get fully focused. But if that's note taking or highlighting, figure out what it is for you and make sure you stick to it. Optional, black coffee and chewing gum. So pretty much lived on coffee when I was studying, especially in the mornings, waking up at 5 a.m., whatever, to get some studying in. Very much so needed that coffee, but it is a stimulant. It does help to activate your mind and really help you focus. So if you need it, then go for it. Also, chewing gum, I just find it helps. I don't even know what it does, but I just really like the sort of feeling of chewing gum while I'm studying. Just gives me something to do again, another thing to sort of occupy myself. And whatever it is that gives you that little advantage, then you need to go in and start doing it. Second tip, sit strategically if you can. Now, I appreciate a lot of firms have quite a rigid exam structure, which you can't go ahead and change. So if that is you, then maybe this doesn't apply to you. However, if you do have the ability to influence the exams you sit and when you sit them, which I'm sure you could if you just push for it, then really make the most of it, because I found that certain exams pair very well together and they do feed into each other. So take advantage of these when you are making your study plan. Now, maybe you've sat a few of these already and this might apply to you going forward, or maybe you haven't even sat any exams yet, then you're in a great position. But it will make your life a lot easier and it will give you that added advantage. So, this is just my recommended study plan, which I would follow if I was to start again. This isn't the exact plan I followed, but in hindsight, if I was, square one 3 years ago, then this is what I would have done. Certificate level, yeah. So, assuming you're starting in September, which is when I know a lot of grad schemes do. So, certificate level, I would try and smash that out within about 6 months or so. But accounting, again, this is pretty obvious. You want to do this one first and do it straight away. Really start studying for it straight away, because this is the foundational exam for everything going forward. Law and BTF, business, technology, and finance, quite nuanced exams and don't really feed much into the other ones I found. So sitting these ones together. Also didn't find them too intensive, even though law was the one I actually scored the worst in out of every single exam. I do think they would complement each other well. Management information, this one was pretty hard, I won't lie. It was a difficult one, and I would sit it by itself if you can. And then principles of tax and assurance, I would sit this in about March time. and I'd sit them together. I don't think assurance is too bad, and principle of attacks, again, not too bad when it comes to the grand scheme of things, but these ones are really going to feed into the professionals. So audit and assurance and tax compliance, I really find that they build directly on these two here. So if you can sit these ones together, I really would. Assurance, again, it just goes into audit and assurance, principles of tax, pretty much a feeder into tax compliance. Going to these professionals with that foundational knowledge, it's really going to help you. And then obviously the professionals you sit every 3 months. So June, sit these two. September, I'd go business strategy, technology, and business planning tax. So this one kind of feeds from this one, but again, I don't think it was that intense, to be honest. It's considered one of the easier professional levels. So I would set that with BPT, which was probably, I'd argue, the hardest professional level exam. So they do pair up quite nicely, and BPT is definitely a feeder from tax compliance. So if you can pretty much get your 3 tax exams done within a short period of time, like we have here, it's definitely going to help you an awful lot. Financial management, I'd set sort of by itself. I don't really feel like it fed from any of the other exams. So a lot of new material to learn. And then financial accounting and reporting is definitely a feeder into corporate reporting. So I would sit that one as close as possible to corporate reporting. As you can see here, I'd sit this in March. And then advanced level, obviously 2 sittings a year, but corporate reporting, sit by itself as it's a beast of an exam. But again, does feed in from this one. So FAR straight to corporate reporting, and then SBM and case study together in November. SBM sort of a feeder from business strategy and technology, but again, not really. And then case study, completely different exams to everything else. So doesn't really apply much to any of the other ones. But I did find there was a bit of sort of crossover between SBM and case study. Some of the stuff that you're studying for SBM did help in case study. So sitting those together would be quite helpful. So if you want to screenshot this or whatever, block my face out, then go for it. But this is basically the plan I would follow. And finally, point 3 is to actually finish the exam. And I don't feel like this gets talked about enough, but I genuinely think this is the sole reason I managed to pass them all first time, is because I actually finished these exams. Now, I don't know if there's any stats behind this, there must be, but I really think that the people that end up finishing the exams are the ones most likely to pass, even if their answers aren't as in depth as people that maybe do 1 or 2 questions and leave out some at the end. I do think there are easy marks and own figure marks that can be picked up far easier and far quicker than it would be to try and absolutely nail a question and, go for those really hard marks, which is kind of what I talk about here. So get those easy marks. Every question has both simple marks and own figure marks. And by not answering the question, you are just missing out on them. So it's better to finish the exam with decent answers on all of it than to nail half a question. Even if you don't have a completely decent answer, but you give a question a good go and you give each requirement a go, I do think you're going to perform better than someone that, only nails and absolutely smashes half the exam, but leaves out a few questions at the end. There's low hanging fruit in these answers and these questions just waiting to be farmed. So make sure you put something down for everything. And don't stress too much about getting the exact right number. I can promise you now, in most exams, I probably didn't get the exact right number. But what I did do is I showed the examiner how I got to that figure. And I really made sure I linked back to working. So every single working, I would just put a little pretext saying W1. And then below that, I'd have my workings under the heading W1. So it's very obvious where these numbers were coming from and what it is I was doing. So I hope that was helpful. And if you want more ACA study tips, then let me know in the comments section below. It's something that I'm interested in and I want to start doing more, because having been through that journey, there's a lot I learned and there's a lot that I feel like I could pass on to other people. So I hope you found that helpful. Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.